just want to start off by saying hello to everybody. Good evening, good morning from wherever you guys are. As many of you know, the mission of my podcast is to host founders of the most disruptive companies in the world and to explain what they do to my audience in a format that is digestible. Oftentimes, I try to identify these companies in the earliest days. So, a lot of the ideas and terminology that are going to be discussed today, like creator economy, decentralized gaming, and power to the players, it might seem like a foreign idea to many of you. Maybe some of you are kind of familiar with it. But I'd also like to think that like I'm a straight shooter. So many times when I hear these weird buzzwords, I'm sure many people probably just disregard it as BS. And I actually think that that's quite reasonable because there's a lot of people boasting about these terms, but not enough people actually educating the public about these terms. So I think today will be an opportunity for many to listen in and decide for themselves whether decentralized gaming is truly something that can be mass adopted and ultimately lucrative enough for early investors. So we're lucky to be joined by VK, the founder of Double Dice, a decentralized pooled betting and gaming metaverse, which allows anyone to create their own rooms and bets on top of their infrastructure.
Hey, thanks
However,
very much.
yeah, of course, of course. Um, However, I think a brief explanation is doing Double Dice a disservice, and I think there's so many layers to peel back, which hopefully VK we can do today for the listeners.
Yeah, that sounds good. And yeah, peeling the onion or cutting to the layers of the cake.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
a certain ogre comes to mind when we talk about those two analogies. But no, look, I'm here. We're going to take it piece by piece, and sometimes the pieces might not be structured very well. But if they're not, and if you have any questions, then yeah, we'll of course answer them to connect the dots.
Awesome. And BK, just before we start, I just want to say thank you for joining Making the Cut, which is part of Pounding the Table Network. So, VK, will you tell us about how long Double Dice has been in the making, and taking your background in derivatives into consideration? How did your prior experience, how did it mold the idea of Double Dice into existence?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So that's a loaded question in itself, right? So this has been in the making for a very, very long time, more than a decade, to be clear. Yeah. And it all comes down from my dislike for centralized parties trying to play the hand of God in any market whatsoever. So I traded derivatives for a very long time, and there is no reason why you need centralized derivatives players. And in the same way, it's the same thing in terms of uh, gaming, right, or gambling. When you are playing roulette and poker and other games, you don't really need to have any centralized parties involved. Not today, anyways, because the people are so interconnected between themselves and the technologies have progressed so much that you do not need to rely on the trust you would place normally in a centralized party to drive economics for any of the market players. And that's exactly what, once you realize that, you start thinking about saying, how do we actually then make this real? So we did that, and we thought about how do we go about a multi-party settlement mechanism which is going to enable transactions between hundreds and thousands of parties on a single outcome of a single variable. And that's what leads to the creation of Double Dice and the many games that you can have on top of that, right? And the reason why we also need this is that there might be avenues which allow other people to play the role of the centralized parties, but that is not in the favor of the people who probably do not understand the risks they undertake when they become the house or that centralized party. So let's say, for example, if Double Dice was just enabling somebody to play the house, right? That would be a complete disservice to the people because they don't normally understand what happens when the bets do not go in their favor, right? If you're playing a house and you started bets and taking on who would win the English Premier League 3 years ago, and suddenly you've got a few punters who bet on Leicester City, which was a 10,000 to 1 outlier, and you end up paying that, well, you're going to be out of money and you're going to be very unhappy about that, right? So we need to create mechanisms where we do this creator economy enablement in a setting that whoever is hosting the room does not end up playing the role of the house and thereby does not have to undertake the risks of playing the house, as per the example I just mentioned, right? And that's exactly what we're doing at Double Dice, allowing people to host their beds, to host their rooms without needing to take over the responsibilities and the risks that come with playing the house.
Right, and I like that you brought up the idea of hosting rooms, and I think that will tie into actually getting into virtual floors, a little bit later down into this discussion that we have.
Yep.
So VK, I know many people who are avid bettors, specifically in blackjack and sports betting, and so it seems like the only modernization of the space has been that the platforms have gone virtual. We can use it on our computers,
Yep.
we can use it on our phones, and we can use it with people that we know, strangers, friends, family alike. But there's still this lingering idea that the house is always inherently set up to win in the long run. So Double Dice is bringing a proprietary algorithm. Um, excuse me, a proprietary algorithm, a no-house platform, and crowd wisdom to gamers that are really worth emphasizing today, I believe. So people probably hear these terms and have no idea what we're talking about. So could you break down each of these terms one by one and probably provide some examples on how they would work in real life scenarios?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's continue with the same football example, right? Which I started with before. Now, if you are playing against the house, you're essentially buying the odds from this person. And what this centralized party will do is, and what you will also observe in the market, as this odds keep changing almost by the minute. And what they are essentially doing is not that they know more than everybody combined, because they have the same information, the same knowledge, the same empirical statistics about who won, how many times, who scored from which position, and so on and so forth. But what they additionally have, which the single bettor does not have, is the crowd wisdom, which is a very important element. Now, if you are going against the house, the odds they are giving out is a byproduct of the thousands of bets they are taking on that same game. And as soon as they can see that thousands of people are favoring a certain outcome, they will reduce the odds on that and increase the odds on the other one so that it becomes more attractive to the punters and people start putting the monies there. This is essentially just a ploy for them to balance their risk and they take a cut in between. And that crowd wisdom, which is generated by the crowd, actually gets misused against the crowd by the centralized houses. And we don't want that to happen at all. So, what we do is we provide the same crowd wisdom in real time to the people as they're coming in and placing their bets. Now, what does that mean, crowd wisdom, right?
Right.
So, if you've looked at the games page on our website, and you will see a little image there which shows you a wave like formation at the bottom of the game being played. Now, let's take an example of Man U versus Chelsea, which is the same example you see on the website as well.
Right.
And you've got multiple options. The easiest thing is to who's going to win, right? But now let's break it down into some interesting options by saying, is it going to be a tie? Is Chelsea going to win by 1 goal difference? Is Chelsea going to win by 2 goal difference? Is Chelsea going to win by 3+ goal difference? And then you mirror that on Man U side. Suddenly you've got 7 different outcomes for that game. And people are placing monies on that. Only one of them will be correct at the end of the day, or end of the game rather. And but one of them will absolutely be correct, because these options which we have created for the people to place bets on are completely exhaustive yet complementary to each other, right? Now, as the people start putting monies on these 7 different outcome options, they are going to be able to see which of these 7 options is currently being favored, how much money is on which of these options, and how many people are putting money on it, right? It
Right.
can be that a few people put a lot of money. It can be that a lot of people put $1 each. It all comes down, those two elements together, the number of people and the amount of money, is together the crowd wisdom. So on the platform, you'll be able to see, if you just want to see the number of people, you want to see the spread of the money, or you want to see both combined, you'll be able to see that crowd wisdom. And then that is the missing ingredient which benefits the current centralized party. In our setup, there is no centralized party, so it works for the benefit of the entire crowd.
Awesome. And so I also just want to hit on the pooled betting versus traditional house betting. VK, could you explain a little bit about the difference about what we're used to with the house betting? What exactly is this pooled betting platform that we discussed so much on Double Dice?
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the listeners here, I recognize it's going to be a repetition, but I'm going to give the roulette example once
Right,
again,
right. I love that
because,
example.
right? I mean, that's just the easiest example to drive home the point. Now, everybody here must have at least seen somebody play on the roulette table, if not played it themselves. And what happens more often than not is that the 10 people around the table have placed monies on the different numbers and parts of the wheel and parts of the table, but nobody gets it right, and the casino still takes away 100% of all the chips on the table. And that is unfair because they didn't get it right. They shouldn't have the right to take away all the chips. On the other hand, you do keep placing the bets one after the other, and finally you get to your 13 black or 14 red, and what you're going to get is an artificially capped return of 35x. Now, statistically, it means that the zero, double zero, and in some casinos now you have triple zeros, it means that they have 3% to 9% roughly edge in a round where somebody actually wins. But in the rounds where nobody wins, they take away 100%.
Right.
That's just unfair. Now look at double dice. What would we do, right? Let's say there are, the same 10, 20, 100 players around the table, and nobody gets it right. We'd just push the money back to them. That 100% of the money that was taken away by the casino doesn't exist on this platform. On the other hand, when somebody does get their number right, and if there were $1,000 on the table at the time, they would get the $1,000, which means there is no artificially capped 35x limit to the returns you can make in this pooled betting setup, right? And that is a fundamental, changing of the risk reward paradigm on its head, because nobody gets it right, you get 100% back, and when you do get it right, there is no cap on your potential returns. And that
Right.
just doesn't exist today. And that is the beauty of this pool setting environment that can bring benefit to the players, as I mentioned. But it also brings benefits to the person hosting the room, as I was talking about before. Now, if you were hosting a room and you played the role of the casino, and for some unlucky reason, somebody kept playing the system, kept doubling the amount they put on a column, and once it hits, you know that you were out 33%. Well, with the pool betting setup, you don't have to worry about it. When you own a bet or a room on Double Dice, your sole effort is going to be in keeping it interesting, in bringing in the people to your room, but you will never have the risks of being the house. And that is what we wanted to bring to life, really enabling the creator economy without them needing to take on the risks of playing the house. And that's how you can bring this to the masses.
Awesome. And BK, I just want to continue on the pooled betting setup. So people listening probably have a few questions, or maybe are looking for a few examples. So I'll give one example. We're playing roulette, and there's 10 people at the table, and there's multiple bets, and somebody puts number red 7, a few chips on that number, and it hits. So does that entire pool go to that one player who was the only one to actually bet on red number 7? And in the second scenario, had nobody landed on the red number 7, everybody's essentially winning, getting their money back because nobody hit that bet.
Correct. So second one is an easy one. Yes, when nobody gets it right, everybody gets their money back. There is no casino that will take away the chips.
Right.
And I don't remember now if the number 7 is red or not. But if yeah, I didn't memorize the wheel. But if the example you gave was, yes, you have, let's say, somebody putting $10 on 7 red, and you've got whatever amounts on the rest of the table, and nobody got it right. Yes, that person will get all the monies from that people because you didn't get it right, and you're going, and there is a winner, so the winner takes it away from the losers. That's the pool betting, right?
Right. Awesome. And so we had spoken a little bit before, and one of the concerns I had raised with you that you actually brought up a very good solution. Or, well, it's not a solution, but it was a very good point that you brought up. It was about the pooled betting setup, and what if someone were to ask, why would I use the pooled betting platform where 35x is probably uncapped, but if there's not much pooled liquidity at the table, why would I be sitting at this table anyway? And could you explain to the listeners about decreasing risk, and how you explained that to me? I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the one thing is, look, I mean, there are going to be owners of the room, and they've asked us several times in the Telegram chats and in personal discussions, like, how do we differentiate ourselves? Well, the one thing is, keep it interesting, decide how much percentage you want to be taking as the host of the room, keep it reasonable. Those are differentiating factors. But the amount of liquidity is also going to be a very big factor, right?
Right.
So if you don't have the liquidity that you would desire on the table, then if some other table has a higher liquidity, then you're going to lose your players to that table. And to answer the other part of the question, it ties to the example I was giving before, that it's not just about, let's say that you are, let's say if there is very low liquidity, I'm not getting my 35x because there are not enough losers on the table who
Right,
lost
right,
the money on that spin.
right.
What is happening is that you are also not losing 100% of the monies you put in when nobody is getting it right. Right. And if everybody got it right, then you still get your money back. So that is a very big differentiator. Don't forget, as I was mentioning, the zero on the roulette wheel
Mm-hmm.
is a 3% cut. If you have a zero and a double zero, they have a 6% edge.
Right.
If you have zero, double zero, and a triple zero,
Mm-hmm.
and there are 36 other numbers and they give you 35x, it's more than a 9% edge that they have. Right. And that is on a winning hand. And otherwise, they just take away 100% when nobody gets it right. So when you factor in that on the 8 hands, when you would have lost money because nobody got it right, you don't lose that. That changes the mathematics and the returns for you completely. Right. So those are the two factors that you would need to keep in mind.
Great. And so, VK, for people who are listening in and they're starting to become intrigued and they're hearing this idea of creating a room or
Yeah.
starting a room with friends or even strangers, what are options in terms of staking programs and creator enablement possible? What's possible through the DODI, which is your token, DODI we call it. What
Yep.
what is possible through DODI tokenomics and virtual floors?
Fantastic. So, look, I mean, the Dodi token has all the benefits which you would normally expect from a given utility token, right? So, holding the right amount of tokens will give you reduced fees, no fees kind of a setup. But the most interesting part, as you mentioned, is that it allows you to set up your own bets and rooms. And the bets can be on anything like sports betting, political races, e-gaming, anything you can figure out, who gets kicked out of which reality show, etc. It can also be rooms where you are hosting, as we mentioned, roulette, poker, blackjack, Yahtzee, craps, whatever it is, right? All in pool betting setup with their own risk reward paradigms.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the standard element of this in the white paper, which you shared with everybody, and thanks for sharing that, by the way, is
Right.
that you hold 10 million Dodi tokens and you have the right to open up one room at a time. What we have done with the staking program is bring benefits to our early supporters and the guys who are committing to this. And what we've done in there is saying it's a time bound program where if you lock in your tokens, and you can decide, by the way, the time horizon you want to have for the token lock in, if it's a year or 100 years, it's entirely up to you. But when you lock it in the first 3 days of the listing, instead of the 10 million Doti tokens, you will only need to lock in 500,000 tokens to have the right to open one bet or one room. If you lock in 1 million, it's two rights. If it's a 1.5 million, it's three rooms, right?
Right.
And we are making it so because we are trying to be more inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
This is a creator economy if we enable a larger amount of people to get in and not make it an exclusive rich man's club, because that's not what the creator economy is
Right.
about. Creator economy is about you let somebody create something and generate an economy for themselves, and you are simply enabling that to occur, which is exactly what we want to be doing. Right.
Right.
And I give this example of YouTube, right? YouTube is a platform. They don't market themselves. They don't produce the content. They're allowing you to say, you make your videos, you make it interesting, you bring in your viewers, and you make money from advertising. Well, here you don't make money from advertising, but you make money by hosting the rooms, right? But we are providing you everything you will need to do that. And I
Right.
think that is very, very important, that we are bringing almost 95% discount. Or on the other hand, if you look at it, 20 times the utility that you can extract from a token
Right.
through this staking program right now, which will then allow you to open up the rooms and say, hey, here's a bet for whatever local game is happening in the Belgium league, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and you have access to a group of 100,000 people who are fanatic about that league or that game, and they are talking about it, and you have a means to attract that community. Well, you're going to attract that community to come onto your room or bedroom. They're going to place bets on it, and let's say you take 1% of the cut for facilitating that pool betting environment. You've just done that in a no risk to yourself environment, because you're not ending up paying anybody, because you're not paying the house, but you have generated that 1% cut for yourself through the efforts of holding the tokens, locking it in, opening the room, and bringing in that crowd. And I like that idea of try to be creative in what you are creating when you are making the bets. Find the way of accessing very, very energized groups of people which are already in one place, and then you can make a maximum impact out of that. So that would be, let's say, a process of deriving a lot of value from our staking program. And what it essentially means is that you don't have to have one room at a time, right? If you have, let's say, three different elements on a single game, you'll need three rooms to run that. The same example of Chelsea Man U, who wins, and then you have who will score first or how many red cards there will be. Those are three different things people can bet on. And if you have three rooms, you can focus on that. Or you can say, I'm going to run one on the El Clasico, one on the English Derby, and one on a Formula One race because it's all happening on one Sunday afternoon, right? So you could do that if you have three rooms, for example.
Right. And I love how Double Dice allows for creativity. So we discussed this before, but not so much today. So we can, on Double Dice platform, we can create bets on entertainment, whether it's like television or elections, things that aren't typically bet on.
Yep.
This platform is giving us the ability to be creative, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's limited by your imagination, right? So we are going to bring out this where you can create, five, seven, nine different options on whatever element that you can think you can market very well, and then go forth and conquer. Because you know where the people are who are energized about this topic. You know how to keep them interested and bring them to your room, and that's all it takes. So you need to differentiate yourself, right? I mean, if there is a big Super Bowl happening in the US, which people keep asking me about. Well, if you've got 50 rooms in there all asking who's going to be the winner, well, that's not very creative, right? And that might not give you the best chance of success. You might find some interesting elements in the game to make it interesting. Or you say that I am going to find bets every day based on the trending topic today. And I will go find out where these people are who are really energized about this and give them something to bet about. That's what will drive this economy, and then more and more people will do this.
Right. And I would actually love to hit, I want to hammer this home on the idea of how is Double Dice actually able to how are you able to do what you do without acting as the house? I kind of want to hit that home. The idea of using smart contracts and taking a small cut of every hand or every bet or every pool. How exactly is that going to work? And then also, if we can just continue on that idea of rooms, competition within different rooms, and how much one one staker is going to be offering compared to another virtual floor staker.
Yeah, no, Bob. So let's do that. So from a technical perspective, what it's going to be is a bunch of smart contracts, and we're going to put out an infographic next week so everybody understands how these 4 or 5 different smart contracts are worked together to enable this entire system. But essentially, everybody's going to be able to connect through their wallets to an admin panel kind of a page where we know if this person has the right to create a bet or a room or not. Once it is done, they will be able to fill in all the details, create the live bet page, and send it to the users. At which point in time, the users will go through a similar process where they're just going to connect their wallets and start betting on whatever it is. All those entries are captured by the smart contract. We will know eventually who is the winner, and the losers will end up paying the winners, as in the case of the other examples I gave in the pool betting setup. And everything is transparent to everybody because you can go and examine it in real time, or you can look back in time as to what happened with this bet and that. So everything is going to be run on a completely on-chain environment.
Right. And VK, could you explain a little bit about random number generation? I know a lot of people are kind of confused about how you're able to do that on chain. I believe, is that where you're doing it? Or are you
Right.
performing it off
Now
the
this
chain?
Yeah. So now the example I gave was the Q1 release of the free format betting about the sports betting, political races, and so on and so
Mhm.
forth. Where RNG will play a part is going to be in the games like poker,
Mhm.
like roulette, because that's where you're going to want to see that, hey, it's not something which is publicly available information. Where the hell did this come from?
Right.
So it's a very simple mechanism where we'll put the hash out before the game begins, and then you can cross verify that this was the correct and no manipulation took place at the settlement of the game itself, right? And that is how you're going to do this. A lot of people have tried to pre-generate the RNG and load it into a smart contract. Well,
Yeah.
that doesn't work because you can already figure out what the next RNG output is going to be.
Wow.
Because even if it was RNG 10 minutes ago, when you loaded it into the smart contract, it's not RNG now,
Right.
right? So that's how we outcome of that. So if you wanted to hack what we are implementing, it would be something by saying, I want to have the mine Bitcoin hash before it got mined, right? So it's not going to happen.
Right. And VK, one of the last things I want to discuss is the NFT implementation with wagers. So I know that you have that your background in derivatives. So how does the idea of transferring ownership coincide with derivative trading? I know you mentioned the idea to me before about placing a wager and then decreasing your risk before the actual bet has concluded. Could you talk to us a little bit how we can use NFTs to trade?
Yes.
That would be super, super awesome.
Fantastic for bringing that up. So let's take through a real example, right? So let's say that people have set up a room for the presidential run in 2024, and you've got the rooms open for 2 months because you want people to start betting 2 months in advance. Well, you're not going to allow them to bet right up until the end, so there might be some time in between. Let's say the last week that you're saying no more bets. Now we're going to write it out and see what happens. When you close the bets being taken, you already know what the total amount is in that pool. You also know how much money was put on which options, the 5, 6, 7 options that you might have laid out. So each and every bet placed will at that point in time know for sure that if it is correct, how much money will that person realize by cashing that in when they are correct. So let's say you put a bet in that for $10 and that would be worth $100 if you were right. But the week goes on and you're thinking, I might not want to hold on to this or I might want to double down. Well, we are going to implement a mechanism where every bet becomes an NFT. Right?
Right.
So what means is when you go to a betting house today, you put in a bet, they'll give you a stub, a piece of paper which you hold in your hand, you go to the counter, you cash it in, or you throw it away because you lost. Well, this is going to be issued as an NFT.
Right.
And
Wow.
this NFT becomes tradable. This is a financial NFT. We might look into an art-based representation of every NFT but through AI means, but let's not digress there. Each and every bet is going to be an NFT, a financial NFT, which can be traded. And we are going to work with some of the other partners within the Constellation ecosystem for that as well,
Mm-hmm.
which we've kind of alluded to in some of the Twitter feeds before. But essentially, all the bets that are placed are going to be NFTs. Now, what does that mean? You know that your $10 bet could be a $100 bet,
Right.
but you want to cash it out early. You might want to sell it to somebody who's willing to buy it for 50 from you. You've got your 40 profit, and the guy who's buying it at 50 essentially thinks, hey, I missed out, but I can still get a 2x on this because I think this is going to be good. And nobody else is giving me that odds. So you're going to sell that NFT to somebody else, and then that person can go and claim it from the smart contract. That's how the technical mechanism has been built, that every bet just gets issued as an NFT, and at the closing time they become tradable, and then you'll be able to trade it with your friends, family, or an open network where there would be an order book for that.
Right. And just to verify, so a lot of the pricing, it's built into the algorithm, your proprietary algorithm over time. Is that what's taken into consideration?
Absolutely. So thanks for bringing that up. I knew I was missing some element of this, right? So there is also a time value element of this, right, which goes into the risk reward. So in the same 2 month political period, right, if you had put the bet on the first day the market began and somebody else put a bet a week before the presidential election outcome, the person who came in earlier was taking on a much higher risk.
Right.
And the person who came in later had 7 more weeks of information, scandals, news, geopolitical situation development, and most importantly, the crowd wisdom development on the market itself, because they can see how many people are betting on which outcome. So their risk at the end of the 7 weeks is much, much lower. So the $10 placed in the beginning might get you a $100 return, but the $10 placed in the seventh week might only give you $30 return.
Right.
That's how the algorithms are structured, because they take into account this time-based appreciation or a multiplier of your potential rewards, simply because accounting for the risk reward, that's how it makes sense looking backwards.
I absolutely think it's brilliant. And when you first explained it to me, I told you that I thought it was brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah. I also want to get into the idea because I know there's so much to uncover. It feels like we're covering so much, and I'm trying not to forget anything. There's also this idea of the benefit of decentralized gaming, where we can bet through different players. So this hits on the topic of giving power to the player. we well, I think a good example is actually betting on poker with the transparency of, you're betting on a player who's sitting at the table. You may probably just be witnessing what's going on, but you have the ability to bet with the transparency of seeing the cards and percentages in real time. So could you discuss a little bit about, if what your different odds might be, whether you're betting on a higher probability hand that is more likely to win on a poker hand, or probably, I'm going to take a riskier bet on a hand that has a less percentage of winning, up until the turn card.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, that format which you just described has that is the most complicated game, let's say, that we are going to create,
Right.
the poker, betting on the poker hands. And it's because that RNGs are going to generate the cards that are going to be turned or distributed. And then there is going to be the odds calculator that is actually feeding the smart contract with the multiples that you might get because of the risk you are taking over when placing a bet on a hand. So if you look at the reverse imposition, what it means is if something has a 100% chance of winning, you're taking zero risk, so you get zero return. And if something has only 1% chance of winning, you're going to get 99x weighted return,
Right.
right? So you start with the hands. There are six hands on the table, and you see, your first round will anyways be the blind betting, right? So you're just going with your gut feel by saying which hand's going to win. You put in the money, and if you are right, then you get 200x, because 100x is the known. 100% is 1 and 200% is 2, which is the double of the blind risk, right? You see the two hands, and suddenly the odds will show up. If you've got double ace on the table, well, it's got, a 55% chance of winning.
Right.
So your returns would be 45x. And then there is a 2-7 unsuited. Well, that's got like 1% chance of
Mm-hmm.
winning, so your
Mm-hmm.
odds might be 99x. And so this will cater to the mathematical nerds. It will
Mm-hmm.
also cater to the speculators, and it will also take into account the guys who are just saying, I know the flop's going to return me 3 2s, and I'm going to put all my money here because that's what they do,
Right.
right? And you're going to have a place where all of these things are catered to, and everybody will be able to see how the odds are developing. So let's say now the flop turns over and there are actually 2 2s and a 7 there, and this guy just hit a full house.
Mm-hmm.
Now the odds of double aces have gone down to 10%.
Right.
So if you now bet on it, you'll get a 90x weighted return. And the guy who had 2-7, well, he'll still need to put in $1, because if he doesn't, he folds, essentially, in the system speak. You have to continue from the blind to the final outcome of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And you start capturing every odds as they are calculated based on the cards turning. Then you've got the turn coming out and it's an ace, and oh my god, now all odds go crazy, and everybody's trying to put the money on the double aces or the 2-7s. And then you're probably going to see a 2 turn up at the river, and at that point in time, of course, you're not taking any bets. So at the turn is the last bets coming in. Then you know which is the winner when the river comes out, and then it gets distributed from the losers to the winners. But in this case, the appreciation of your returns is not based on time as it was in the political scenario, but it's based on the mathematical odds and the returns that were given on the go every time a new card turned up.
Brilliant. And so we just discussed that we have the ability to bet on specific hands. Will we also be able to bet on specific players throughout the entirety of the game?
Now, well, look, that is a different one, because you could do that where we are observing, let's say, instead of an e-gaming feed, we are just observing a feed of a poker tournament going on,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're just allowing people to bet on it. So yes, absolutely.
Wow.
It's a different one, because there we don't even have to calculate the odds.
Mm-hmm.
Then it would go into who wins, because you're passively observing it. Whereas in the example I gave, you're actively calculating yourself in your
Right.
head the odds, because you're actually playing through that. And you can bet on all six hands if you want, right? So you can start with $1 on all six hands strategically by saying, hey, I'm going to put my finger in each pie. Then the next round, you pick the two best hands. Then you go down to one hand. Hey, all the strategies will come into play, because everybody will play it differently. I have thought of every which way you can play a given hand. I won't be playing in there just to make it fair. But yes, you will see all these different kinds of strategies going in, and the different risk takers going in, and they are going to be able to cater to their needs. Either they're speculators, gamers, gamblers, mathematical nerds, they'll all be able to fit on the same table and they'll all still have a way to make money. It's not just that one party will always have an advantage.
Amazing. And so I probably foresee that a lot of people are listening to this now and they're thinking, okay, what's stopping anybody else from trying to copy this? Why can't another big player with a lot of money come in and try to do the same thing? So VK, could you explain a little bit about the patents that you've been working on, and
Absolutely.
how far out is that patent going to be valid for?
Yes, absolutely. So the patent was actually created in 2008. Well, it was filed in June 2008, and then it got approved in 2011, and it runs up until 2032. So we've got ample time for this baby to run out of the gates
Right.
and get as much network effect as we can over the next 11 years. And then that is going to be a very big barrier to entry. So there are, when you think about protection against a business model, there are many different ways you can build potential protection for yourself or increase the barriers of entry for the others. Well, one thing is clearly that we've got this patent in hand. 11 years down the line, when there are thousands of rooms, hopefully everybody will stake and we will have thousands of rooms, and you've got all this liquidity on the platform. Well, even if somebody else tries to do this, they're not going to gain traction. Facebook is Facebook, not just because they've got some protection against it, but if 100 million other people are there, well, you're going to go there to find the other people, right? So the network effect becomes the next stage where you say, that's how we're going to be successful, because in the 11 years head start that we have, we are going to be able to create ample liquidity and network effect, so that if millions of players are here and millions of dollars being wagered here, why would somebody else go somewhere else?
Right.
Right.
Right. And also, if you could add, how is Constellation helping you? How are they bringing solutions to some problems that maybe you had with scalability and scaling the platform, getting it out across chains, and how many? I'm not super fluent in blockchain, but how is Double Dice structured today, and what is the hope for how it could be structured a few years from now?
Okay, all right. So look, we started developing it on Ethereum. Now everybody knows how much we all love to hate Ethereum because of the scalability issues, the lag, and the fees, and so on and so forth. So the immediate option available to us was to move to a low cost and relatively faster environment, which we have done today by moving to Polygon. So that's what we are going to deploy in the first stage. So, and this is also one of the questions that get asked a lot. The token is going to be deployed on Ethereum, and the vesting contracts are going to be there, but the games are actually going to be played on Polygon, and the staking will also be on Polygon, right? So we have moved there to reduce the lag and reduce the costs right now.
Right.
But when we started discussing the project with the Constellation team, which was about 11, 12 weeks ago now, we had the ambition of a multi-protocol deployment because we want this to get out to as many people as possible. Now, if we have an L0 deployment, it's a single deployment that fulfills our ambition rather than having 10 different deployments. So it was a very easy decision to make by saying, this is what is going to solve for the problem of having to maintain multiple protocol deployments in a single go. And that's what we are going to do as soon as Constellation goes live, right? So, and also, of course, that we understand that the scalability, the lag, and the fees are not going to be an issue in the setup where you combine the things like Constellation and LTX, and for NFT trading, we would use Void. It just becomes an ecosystem that helps each other out and makes it very easy to reach as many people as possible, right? So that's what our ultimate target is. We will wait until that goes live, and when that is live, then we will move there. Our hope also is that we will, even in terms of RNG, we might have a native solution on chain, which is not created thus far, but that would be absolutely fantastic, and that would eliminate a lot of complexities and add to the transparencies. So we're going to be looking at that. But of course, we are deploying it right now to get to the market and start building the network effect as soon as possible. So in Q1, we'll bring out the live bet rooms. And then, as soon as we have Constellation, we're going to move there.
Beautiful. And before, I don't want to take up too much of everybody's Sunday. I don't want to take up too much time, but VK, I just want to close out by asking you about your casino test platform that can be used online currently. So if anybody is, curious enough to go take a peek, where can they go and check out your, I guess it's a testing or a test platform. Is it an extension that people can use?
Well, so right now, what we have available is the prototype of the poker game,
Okay.
just so that everybody understands how the mathematics works out.
Right.
There is no other thing where you can try out in the testnet format right now. What we will be doing, and I think one video I leaked out myself, was how the whole metaverse environment is going to look like, where you can actually walk around and see the blackjack tables and the roulette tables, and you get the feel of what it's going to be like. What we are going to do over the next week or 10 days is going to create an environment where people can actually log into it from their own computers,
Mm-hmm.
load it up, connect their MetaMask wallet, and walk around the casino. It's not going to be live. You're not going to be able to do it like, Ready Player One scenario,
Right.
but you're going to be able to get a sense of what it's going to be like when it's ready.
Right. And an average user will just be able to use like a mobile phone or a computer. It's not going to require too much hardware.
Well, because it will require your laptop,
Okay.
because if you do a Unity-based WebGL build,
Right.
then you will need to have it won't work on a mobile phone. It's too much, and you're going to be able to do it on your laptop and do it in the browser where you have your MetaMask loaded. Don't use the real MetaMask wallet. Use one of your ones which has zero value
Right.
to feel safe. Connect it in and walk around.
Right.
And you'll also be able to see therein, which we are hoping. I can't promise you right now, but we might also show you the functionality of how you will in the future be able to buy and keep your AI based NFT, which becomes your avatar in the metaverse, which is like a fully animated version, and whatever you're doing gets done in the metaverse as well.
VK, thank you so much for joining me. I can't say it enough times that I think you're brilliant, and I'm very fond of what you're doing over there at Double Dice, and I'm also very excited to see how this rolls out slowly over time. I think that it will actually gain mass adoption because the current structure is just totally outdated. Some would even say obsolete. I would encourage people to actually go read the white paper for themselves. I posted that on my feed. It's I can actually pin it to the top of my profile. I really encourage people to go read that. It has a ton of good information. I think what we covered today is pretty great. It's excellent material, but there's always always more reading and more diving that you can do to expand your knowledge on the topic. So VK, if you want to add any last words.
No, I want to say thank you very much for your kind
Of
words. It's
course.
been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having us. And we are happy to answer any questions that come to people's mind. Just come over to the Telegram channel. We've got 8 different admins there, and myself as well, and we'll answer your question as soon as possible.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
It's me. Y'all on level 1, I'm level 3. Pounding on the table for my team. Every night I flex, I'm making big moves. That's a big move. Big money,